What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the SmeshCast. We are fresh off the fights. We've got Adam, we've got Noah, I'm Rowie. Let's get started. So we had a crazy weekend of fights. This has got to be, I think, one of the best cards I've seen in quite some time, a couple of weeks, definitely at least a couple of weeks. Colby
No question.
Tyron was maybe a little bit of not quite as exciting as the rest of the card, but I think it was a good fight. It was just that when you compare it to the rest of the card, it wasn't quite there.
It was a Woodley fight. It wasn't entirely unexpected.
Yep.
Colby did.
Right.
I will say, before I go into anything about Colby that I want to, I'll say positive things. He kept the fight exciting, and he fought on his own terms.
Yeah. I mean, Woodley was coming into it, and he said Colby reminds him of a cardio kickboxer. And if I'm being honest, that's kind of what Colby did. He had the wrestling, he had some good clinch work, but it was just the cardio. He kept on working. And I think Tyron came out actually with a very different stance. He was walking Colby down for the first couple minutes. He was aggressive. He was throwing shots, but then he threw that one big right hand. Colby took him down. Beautiful double leg takedown. And from then on, Tyron reverted back to his old self, back to backing up the whole time. And I think that what it really came down to was the fact that Tyron is a little bit just too one-dimensional still. Or maybe not one-dimensional, I'd say two-dimensional. He has two weapons. He has some wrestling, and he has his right hand. And he didn't want to wrestle with Colby. He knew he couldn't keep up with the cardio. And the right hand was just too telegraphed. So Colby just didn't care, backed off when he needed to, and he just overwhelmed him. And it was just a classic Colby, a classic Tyron. It's kind of what everyone expected, I think. And then, of course, Colby got that finish in that fifth round with the Tyron rib injury.
It's hard for me to judge Tyron's style just based on the fact that I wasn't really around for his come up. And I mean, the guy was champion, and he has phenomenal credentials, prior to this streak of losses that he's on. It's interesting. I'm going to give a big shout out to a much larger channel than ours. Rowie, I don't know, Adam, if you watch them. Mixed Molly Whoppery on YouTube?
Of course.
Of course. For anyone who doesn't know, great channel. He does little documentary-type videos about fighters with a lovely Boston charm to him. Anyways, he did a little video about Mike Tyson last night.
Okay.
Nice little 15-minute video. But one of the things that he goes into is, and this is almost entirely out of Tyson's mouth, once you get to a certain age, you just don't have, you could have the physicality, but you don't have the killer instinct. You're looking across the guy, and, you don't want to kill him anymore. You just want to, hang out and be a regular guy. I mean, Mike Tyson is a good example. Look at how much that guy has mellowed out in his old age. You listen to him talk, I mean, he sounds like he's a very insightful guy. Talk to him back in his 20s, he's like, a crazy motherfucker. Age takes some of the killer instinct out of guys. And, I mean, Tyron can still clearly throw good shots, but I don't think he has it in him mentally anymore. I think that, I'm of two minds. One, maybe he is just fighting the toughest of the toughest hardcore guys right now, and he's just being outclassed, and that is what it is. But maybe this would happen, like with any fight that he enters into at this point. Maybe he just doesn't have it in him anymore.
Yeah, it's possible.
You got to ask the question, do we give him one more, or does he think about retirement? Based on the fact that Dana, I don't think, said retirement for Woodley, whereas he did say retirement about another fighter that we'll talk about later tonight. It's going to be up to Woodley. So when he's out of the hospital, all better. I guess we'll hear more about what he wants to do, but I think it might be time to hang him up.
Yeah, it's also unfortunate because, like, younger fighters could say, okay, I can take some time off of the sport, maybe take a year and a half off, get my training back under me, and just come back to the sport with a fresh mind. But he's just, up there in age, not calling him old in the slightest, but he's near the end of his career, and he just doesn't have that opportunity to take time off of the sport and come back.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say he is kind of getting old. I mean, he's 37, I think, maybe 38.
37, 38, one of those.
38, yeah. I mean, when you're going, especially in welterweight's not a really high weight class. The guys you can't go quite as old. Heavyweight, you can see a guy being 38 and be really successful. Welterweight's a bit more difficult. I think, to be honest, I mean, I agree with you, Noah. Definitely, you lose killer instinct when you get older, and I think he has lost a bit of that But Tyron has always been a little bit of a hesitant fighter. The way he's always kind of fought is he lets he's usually fighting on the back foot. He's letting guys come into him. He pulls guys into that right hand. When the guys try to close that distance, then he explodes with that right hand, and he's gotten a couple great knockouts like that. The Robbie Lawler fight was a bit different. He came out a lot more similarly to how he did in the start of this Colby fight, and he had a crazy fast right hand that knocked him out. But he's also had fights where he's been a lot more on the back foot, a lot of fights where he's been a lot more timid, hasn't thrown as many shots. Even if you look at the Darren Till fight, he wasn't. Yes, he won. Yes, he knocked Till out almost, knocked him down, at least got the choke, but he wasn't aggressive. Till was the guy walking forward. Till just wasn't throwing anything because he was scared of Tyron's right hand. He was aware of it. So, and then eventually he caught him with that right hand. But it's just, that's just kind of how Tyron fights. And I think that at this point, the game plan or the way to beat him, right? That the steps that you need to do or the things you need to do to him to make him uncomfortable and to overwhelm him and to avoid the danger is kind of set out there, right? Everyone knows how to beat him now. And especially when you're facing the top three guys in the division, I'd say the best three guys in the welterweight division in the world, you can very much argue are Colby, Kamaru, and Gilbert Burns. And those are the three guys he just lost, 14 straight, maybe 15 straight if you want to count that last round too.
Yeah.
So it's just like, this is just who Tyron is. And I think the game has kind of moved past him. I think Dana might have actually said something about he should retire.
Did he? I might have missed that.
I think he did, because he was just saying, like, he's not going to win a championship. That's for sure. So what's the point? And you can also see he's getting more fragile, right? Like that rib injury, it does happen. I think it happened to Anthony Pettis against Dustin Poirier. But when you get to a certain point, you are more fragile and you're going to start getting taking a lot more damage, and you can't recover as quickly from that damage. And as you mentioned, Adam, you don't have as much time anymore to go and recover and take some time off, because every day that you wait is counting against you because you're losing your prime. You're heading away from it every day.
Yeah. And like, to the point that his fighting style is, for the most of his, like the big part of his career, like him fighting off of his back foot, he gets pressed against the cage and then throws a big right hand. It's hard to break that habit off after, 20 plus years of training. And like, it's definitely not one that you're going to break right at the end of your career. So I'm not really sure what's next for him.
Journeyman status.
I mean, there was that one, some people were saying, and I kind of am okay with this, if he is going to fight again, which I don't see a point to do so unless he really needs the money or anything. But I think he's kind of proven himself, and he's at the point where he doesn't need to kind of hurt his legacy anymore by taking more risks. But if you are going to put him up against someone, another old guy who's on his way out, like a Robbie Lawler, would actually be a really, really good fight. Robbie Lawler, another guy who a lot of people are calling for the retirement of.
It could be a really good fight, or it could be an extraordinarily boring fight. That's sort of the ticket. Either way, they both should retire after that fight.
Yeah, for sure. Just kind of have an old one. I mean, Lawler as well is a rematch, so that's why it also has some storyline to it.
Yeah.
He also, I mean, he talked about this when he was champion, and I don't know how much of a good opportunity it would be for him to do it now, but he did talk about moving up to 185 at some point. Potentially there's a little bit more action for him there, but at the same time, if he's just going to keep fighting the same style, then I mean, people are just going to adapt to it so well that he's not going to have a good chance. So
I think the same problems exist at middleweight, and in fact, I think it actually might be worse at middleweight, because again, people still know what he is good at and they know how to avoid it. But even more so, if he's hesitant to throw shots, you'd be even more hesitant at 185. These guys are going to throw with more power, and their takedowns are going to have more force. And when they're on top of you, they're heavier and harder to get off of you. So I just see, if anything, a move to 185 making it worse. And at this point in his career, he's not going to. Do you really think he has a chance against Adesanya, against Costa, against Romero, Whitaker? Like, there's no way. He's too small as well. In general, his body type is the wrong body type. He's too short and stocky. Welterweight's the perfect division for him. He was very successful for a long time. I don't think we need to go and try to look for solutions to elongate his career. I think he's had a good career. It's not being that short.
He's had a great career.
Very, very successful. He's had 4 title defenses, I believe, maybe 3. I feel like it's 4.
4 up. I think it's 4.
I don't know if the tie counts as a title defense or not.
Oh, true say.
But regardless, he's had 4 fights with the title, like, and plus 1 that he lost. Like, he's been around enough time. I think we can cut him loose. As horrible as it is to say, it's like he's had his career. He's ready, I think, or I'm ready to see him go. Maybe he's not ready to go. But
let me float an idea by you. What would you think about like Woodley versus Nate or Nick?
I mean, I think Nick would be interesting because we don't know where Nick is at.
Strikeforce days.
Yeah, I mean, the Nate Diaz fight, I actually would call Nate Diaz over him. I think Nate's volume is very much like Colby's volume, and he just what Tyron is. It seems like while he fights a back foot style, he's not good on the back foot. He only has that one big punch, but he doesn't. It's not like he's a guy who's always backing up, but always countering. He's relying on that one big shot. And I think that when you have guys that can just put on the volume, like Colby and like the Diaz brothers, that's what his kryptonite really seems to be. It's the other power guys he does well with, like the Robbie Lawlers.
All right. Yeah.
But it would be a good fight.
He's just too, he's scared of taking damage. That's the unfortunate truth. And I mean, nobody wants to take damage, but on a scale from, if someone like Lawler's at one end of the scale in terms of actively wanting to take damage, Woodley is very, very far at the other end of that scale. He won't put himself out there just because he doesn't want to get hit.
Which is okay.
Fair, but, at this point in his career, maybe that's a sign. If you're too scared to get hit to, pull the trigger, then, professional fight, that sounds like a major part of professional fighting that maybe you should reconsider.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on Tyron. I think we've kind of beaten this dead horse. Sure. Let's move on to the. I mean, at the dead same horse.
Time, what a brutal. Sorry, but you got to retire though. It's over.
All right. Well, Colby Covington he does deserve a lot of credit for his performance because as much as Tyron didn't do very well, a lot of that was thanks to Colby's amazing work. Colby, like honestly, everyone hates him. Everyone, or not everyone, but many people hate him, and he's an easy guy to hate. But at the end of the day, you got to respect the talent. This guy is a beast. He is the only one who's put up a competitive fight with Usman. Out of every single person Usman has fought, he's the only one who I can actually see going 5 rounds and staying cardio-wise with Usman.
Oh my God, his cardio is insane.
And nobody has put it on him, other than that one loss he had earlier in his career. I forget to who it was. But other than the Usman loss and the other loss earlier on, he's just been dominant. And I can very much see him. He might need one more fight because we do have that Gilbert fight coming up. But I think he's right on the track for a title shot. And by the way, Dana was asked at the post-fight presser, and they said, "What's going on with the Nate versus Nate Jorge 2, like the BMF 2 fight?" He says, "We don't know where we're at with that." They asked, "What do you think about Covington versus Jorge?" He says, "Yeah, I like that fight. I think that would be a really good fight to do." So I think if we can get Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal, it'll make all the fans happy. There's amazing backstory. These are guys that used to live together. Colby used to train together, but he lived in Jorge's house. Jorge brought him up through the rankings, and then he feels betrayed by Colby. You have this horrible grudge match. And of course, everyone's been complaining that Jorge hasn't gotten, Noah, you've been part of this, but so have I. Jorge's not been getting real fights. He's been getting very favorable big name matchups that are maybe over the hill, like Nate Diaz. And this is the chance where he can actually really, really prove himself. If he beats Colby Covington, I am all aboard the Jorge Masvidal's hype train. Absolutely.
It's difficult for me to see him beating Colby because, I mean, just because of how easily I would say I would compare Colby with, say, Usman, especially in their fight together. Just their similar skill sets and how they really took it to each other versus how easily Usman was able to dispatch of Masvidal. I don't know if Masvidal has very much for Covington. I think Covington would win that fight pretty handily.
Adam, what do you think of that fight?
I think I would edge slightly more towards Covington just because of his cardio and the amount, like the volume of punches he throws compared to Jorge's sort of like blitzes, where he can kind of burn his gas tank a little bit more easily. It's definitely a fight I would like to see. Like it makes sense, you know. Jorge, although the fight was pretty one-sided when he fought Usman, it'd be a good fight to see who should fight for the title next. Yeah, I mean, makes sense for sure.
The one thing I will say that is different between Colby and Usman is that Usman's a lot more of a physical fighter. He uses his physicality more, his weight, his strength, whereas Colby is, in fact, you see Colby throws a lot more strikes on the feet. Usman will lean on you a lot more and use that physicality, as I was saying. And I think that's what really did it for Jorge, where he felt like he was maybe not in the greatest shape as he could have been, especially with a tougher weight cut than he was used to. And he feels like he just couldn't keep up with that physicality of such a bigger guy, and Colby doesn't have that as much. So I think that does play in Jorge's favor. In terms of just like, I definitely favor him over Covington a lot more than I favor him over Usman. That's not even a comparison between Covington and Usman. It's just about the style of matchup. I think it's much more favorable for Jorge to fight Covington. However, I still would definitely lean Colby. I think Colby, I think while Tyron has that real dog in him, and he has that, he can knock you out at a second. He can really just attack and take over. I do still think Covington is tough enough, as he proved in that Usman fight, to hang with Jorge for the beginning, kind of grind him out and do what he's been doing to everybody else, and just overwhelm him with the striking and with the volume, and of course the wrestling as well. Just that work rate, that constant work rate.
Yeah,
I think most of what Masvidal would have going for him there is, I think that Masvidal could KO Covington. I don't think that Covington could KO Masvidal.
He could
so,
TKO.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
He could, but it would be I think it would be more of a challenge. I think that Covington would have to fight he'd have to fight very smart defensively, while being mindful of that his pressure is his greatest weapon.
I'm curious.
I'm interested in that fight. No question. That's very, very interesting fight.
I'm curious if they go to the ground, because Covington, of course, I think a really safe thing for him to do would be taking down Masvidal and grinding him out and tiring him out and whatnot. But Masvidal is not a slouch on the ground. Masvidal is a good BJJ player.
And excellent takedown defense.
Then
again, I mean, look at the ease with which Covington was able to take down Woodley, who has, his own.
It wasn't ease.
Ridiculous.
It wasn't ease. It was that first round.
He dumped him.
No. The first takedown he got was because Tyron overextended himself on that right hand, and he was leaning way too far forward. He was out of position. It was just perfectly timed. But later on, when he got that big, I don't know if you remember that high crotch takedown where he picked him up. It was the third or fourth round. Yeah. That took him in 3 or 4 rounds to get it. He had to get Tyron kind of tired. He had to get that advantage more on his side, and then he was able to do it. And I think the same thing would happen with Jorge. The first few rounds would be competitive, and the later it gets, the more it favors Colby.
Yeah, that's a given. I mean, even just looking back at Masvidal versus Nate Diaz, it was very clear that Masvidal's gas tank starts to run out in those championship rounds.
I still disagree with that point, but I think we've been over that a few times now, so don't need to go too much on that. Anything else to say about this? I mean, again, I think we all say Covington should fight Jorge possibly next, maybe Leon Edwards. Other than that,
great fight. I kind of want to talk a little shit. I don't know if you want to wait till later to do that.
No, go for it. You talk your shit. Let me hear it.
All right, so Covington, I mean, it's not new that he makes an ass of himself whenever he talks. It sounds like he's very obviously reading off a script. He's like stuttering along, just like trying to remember his lines. But like, goddamn, he really makes himself sound like such a fucking loser. Okay, you know what? Actually, I had a thought also with first off, I can't imagine what he would do if he got out of like a boring fight. Like if he just wrestle fucked someone for a fight and it was just like a unanimously boring performance. I would love to see him get up to the mic and still talk his shit.
He will. Absolutely would.
He absolutely will, but it will sound
Robbie
even
Lawler
more
was that fight.
Stupid and disingenuous.
No, but Robbie Lawler was that fight. Hell, this fight was that fight. This fight was that fight. It was kind of boring in that sense.
He kept it exciting. He kept it exciting in this fight. I wasn't as bored as I've been, during some other low activity fights. Okay. At least someone was taking
boring, but it was that style is what I meant.
Yeah, sure. But God, okay. So after the fight, he was talking with Usman, and they were on camera
Talking.
together, talking. Yeah. There's a certain point when they were speaking where Covington just started screaming and yelling and acting like a child. I think he was really bothered because Usman kept saying like, I broke your face,
I
which is a
broke
fact.
your face,
I mean,
dude.
Covington was sitting there talking like some dumb shit. First off, he said something along the lines of Usman getting smoke signals from his tribe.
Yeah,
I don't really need to say anything about that. I think we can all see where he's getting at. He kept calling Tyron woke too, and like going over it. It's like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of little messages that Covington's putting out, and you'd have to be kind of a moron not to see that. But I'll say that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, and I think he knows how to edge the line, and I think he crosses it a little bit much. But I think what he's trying to do is be on that line as close to it as he possibly can be, and trigger as many people as he possibly can to get them to watch him. And it works.
I just think if
he's selling his soul,
he's gonna push, and he's gonna push. And I think that if he could say the thing that I think he really wants to say without repercussions, he would.
Here's the thing. I was actually just thinking, actually.
I don't care for him.
I think it's an interesting comparison between him and Henry Cejudo, because they both are guys that everyone knows it's an act, and they acknowledge essentially it's an act. Everyone knows they're trying to get people to get annoyed at them and trying to get people to hate them, but the way that they approach it is a bit different. Let's start with Cejudo. Cejudo does it a lot more. I'm going to be cringy. I'm going to start calling you guys names and doing all this stuff and just making sure people hear me and keep on talking about me. But when he did once or twice, he has crossed the line. He took it back. So he once called Aljamain Sterling, he called him Aljamain Sterling or something along those lines. And Karen Bryan called him out and said, that's racist. You cannot say that. And he took the tweet down and hasn't done it again. I don't know if he actually formally apologized, but he changed his behavior immediately. Colby, if he does something like that, he says, oh, everyone's getting pissed at me. Perfect. I've done my job.
It's fueling the fire.
There's no real great way to go into some of his comments without going into topics that are just really none of our business to be talking about. I don't know. Sure. Just wish it wasn't controversial to say, Colby Covington's a racist. And if at the very least he's playing the part of a racist and trying to appeal to racists. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
He's playing the race card, that's for sure. He's absolutely.
Just,
in this climate especially, it's not.
Yeah, that's real. I think there's something to be said for, look at Leon Edwards. He is an incredible fighter. He arguably should have a title shot very clearly in front of him. Dana doesn't want to touch that guy with a 50-foot pole.
No, that's not true anymore. That's not true anymore. Dana's been actually talking really good things. He says that he has a great future. He's going to make some really good fights.
Because the people are asking, people are realizing how ridiculous it is, especially in light of all these fighters really pressing and criticizing the UFC. But Dana's made it clear that if you're not willing to market yourself, he's, unless you're really something special, he's not going to market, for you. So Covington, on one hand, I don't know if you guys have seen the video. There's a video of a fan coming up and getting his autograph and someone filming it and asks him, why do you do it? And he's like, listen, it is what it is. You've got to sell these fights. You have to do what you have to do in this world. Granted, he's stoking legitimate real life political flames and race tension, which is
the difference between him and Cejudo, right? So Cejudo is, I think Cejudo, you can say the exact same thing. Hey, why are you doing that? And then he says something along the lines of, well, because people don't want to see this, people want to see the other character, and go ahead and do it. But the difference that Cejudo isn't actually causing real problems, isn't pushing buttons that are literally costing lives today.
Yeah.
The small point I wanted to add about Covington during his interviews and his press conferences is he has a couple of seconds every 5 or 10 minutes or so where he just lets out a little bit of authenticity that's just, it's so bizarre to see. And to give an example, the president called him and they showed it in an interview, Trump was speaking to him saying wow, you're a great fighter, phenomenal fight, and was wishing him well, and he hung up the call and the interview was still on, and he was just like Kobe's face just lit up like a kid in a candy store, and he was like, "Wow, like I can't believe that just happened. Like that was insane." And it's strange to see like that little bit of authenticity in such a big act.
You can't hold a character forever.
Do you guys think when he started yelling at Usman that was authentic Colby? He was genuinely angry, or do you think
it's
that
a bit of both?
Yeah, a bit of both. I would agree.
I'm inclined to agree.
So what I found interesting is that because like he's clearly, it seems like it really bugs him that he lost. I think the competitiveness, the competitor in him is real. And he really feels like he needed to beat him, but he was saying, "Oh, I'm really coming this time," and it was like you said that the last time. He's like, "Oh well, this time I'm really coming to get you," and like he kept on saying, "Oh, dude, I broke your face." He was saying things. He started trying to change the story. He's like, "Yeah, I was beating you up for 5 rounds," and Usman's looking around like, "What? Did you guys hear?"
Usman, only Covington could make Usman look like a good trash talker. All he had to do was spit the facts. I broke your face.
And he just kept on saying it, dude. I broke. Like, what are you saying right now? I broke your face, dude.
Still calling out like fake eye pokes and like he's just. You know what? I think to make a long story short on Colby, even though I could go more into it than this, he might not be all the things that he presents himself to the world as, but I am certain that he is an asshole.
Okay, well, on that note, let's move on. We had a crazy long card, and we also have a great card next week, so you got a lot to break down. Let's move on to our co-main event. We had Donald Cowboy Cerrone taking on Nico Price. Cowboy coming off a 4-fight losing streak, which is crazy for Cowboy. He had the starting off with the Tony, into the Gaethje loss, into the McGregor loss, and then lastly the Pettis loss. So of course that is
the Pettis one. Granted, was controversial.
Well,
I remember calling that for Cowboy. Pettis called that for Cowboy.
Okay.
I will say when you read before Pettis, when you read those 3 names out, it's like okay, those losses don't seem so bad.
No, they're not losses. They're not bad in the sense of he's not good anymore. It's just all right. You've taken some real damage recently. 3 of those were knockouts, right? And all 3 of those knockouts were in the first round and a half or 2 rounds. There were 2 rounds or less.
He's got to think about young Riot.
So in this fight, Nico Price, who is a wild man with a lot of power, was putting it on him for the first 2.5, 3 minutes of that fight. I thought Cowboy was done on numerous occasions. I said it's over.
He looked wobbly at points.
He looks like he was hurt that for that whole first round, and it looked like that eye poke. The first eye poke affected him. The fight changed a little bit after, and by that the time that second eye poke happened, it really changed the approach of Nico Price. He wasn't quite as aggressive. He didn't have as much energy left, I think, as well. The gas tank was a little bit...
Well, he tired himself out midway through the first round for sure. He didn't have that kind of volume for the rest.
And so Cowboy was able to survive, and that second eye poke ended up costing Nico a point. So that round ended up being a 9-9 round. And those other 2 rounds really could have gone either way. They were a lot closer. Nico didn't have the pop that he had earlier, and so Cowboy was doing a lot better job being able to keep up. He got a bunch of head kicks in there, and he managed to get one of those 2 rounds. And thanks to that 9-9 first round, it was a draw. And by the way, I agreed with that call. I thought it was a draw as well. I don't know which of those 2 rounds I would give to Cowboy.
I think without the point deduction, I give it to Price.
No, that's why it's a draw. Exactly. We give the first round to Price, and then one of the other two rounds were split.
It was funny. My roommate watched last night with me. It's his first ever UFC card.
Okay.
And which is, this is a great card to start on because we had a lot of great finishes. Although I did let him know that the final fight would probably be the most boring fight. Anyways, we were watching Cowboy versus Price, and once the fight's over and we're waiting for the judgment, he asks me, he's like, how often do draws happen in this sport? And I'm like, it's so rare.
Well,
it's so rare, you're like almost never going to see one. That fight, it's a draw. He looks at me like an idiot. Like, oh yeah, rare, huh?
Well, no, but that makes sense though in this one because he had a point deduction. If there wasn't a point deduction, it wouldn't have been a draw.
No, sure. It was very, very, he didn't realize that he had like a point deduction. He didn't even know what the points meant. He just happened to ask that, and oh, it's so rare. You're never going to see a draw right then.
Well, okay. Well, I think the big question here, Nico Price and Cowboy were both actually calling for a rematch. I think Price was so funny, dude. He was
Oh my
he,
God,
before
what a
in the press
character.
conference. He's like, "Man, I love this guy. I'm so excited to fight him. It's gonna be great." The whole time they're talking, he pokes him in the eye. He's like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry, man. Hope everything's okay."
That was
It was
great.
amazing. And then
I was
after the
glad to
fight,
see him.
when he
apologize.
saw that nobody lost, he's like, "Yeah, no one lost. We tied, man. This is awesome." And he was hyped about it. It was just so funny to see.
Just happy
And
to fight. Just
he
happy to be
wanted-
there.
Yeah, and but I mean, Cowboy thought of it as a loss because he did lose. It
Yeah.
wasn't for the eye poke. And
Yeah.
Dana said that he thinks he and Cowboy need to have a serious conversation. He said he knows what Cowboy's going to say, but he thinks he should have a real conversation with Cowboy about whether or not he should continue in the sport. Because he's very capable of winning more fights. Absolutely, no questions asked. Cowboy is still a top-level MMA fighter. But what are you fighting for? And this is the same thing I brought up last week. If you're going to keep fighting, that's okay, but know what you're fighting for. If you're fighting just to have fun and do it, maybe that's okay, but you have to understand what the consequences are.
Know the risks.
Know the risks. If you're fighting for a title shot, if he thinks he's still going to be a contender, I think he's past that point, right? Sure. Nico, if you can't beat Nico Price, you're not going to beat Kamaru Usman. If you lost to Gaethje, Tony, and McGregor, you're not getting a title shot in 155. It's just it's too late.
It's too much of a murderer's row.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because he's one of my favorite fighters of all time. And
Absolutely.
like there was a time like after he beat Hernandez and then Ally Quinta, they're like, oh, maybe he's about to go on like a one last title run. And it was super intriguing to watch. But he's just another fighter that I think is getting up there in age and doesn't have the opportunity to take some time off from the sport, reevaluate, come back, with some more training. He's just up there in age. And, I think there's still some good fights for him. I know he always says he wants to get to 50 Zuffa fights. I'm not sure what he's at right now.
Good question.
But if you want, I think he was close. Like when I heard that statement, I want to say he was at like 43 or 44.
His first,
Six
how many
more
fights did he
though.
have?
I don't know.
Sorry.
He said he's not going to fight again
ago.
He's not going to fight again until 2021. He said.
I mean, he only had 1, 2, 3. He had only had 7 fights before WEC, right? And those are considered under the banner. So if he had 7 fights under WEC, he's 36-15 now, which means he has 51 total fights. 7 of them not and 7 of them not under the Zuffa banner. And so what would that be then? I guess he has 6 fights to go. He's at 44 fights for Zuffa. That is insane. That is insanity.
Hell of a legacy.
44 fights in WEC and UFC combined. That's absurd. So yeah, this guy has been around. It's not just the age. It's more so just there's age, there's fighting age, right? And I think his fighting age is just past that prime, right? Well, how old is he now? He's 37 now.
37,
He's getting there in age, but he's also
in terms of career age.
He's 14 years into his career. Sorry, he's 13 years into his Zuffa career.
Mm-hmm. But as a fighter, he's been fighting like.
No, 13 years is a long time, and 13 years, and those weren't inactive years. Cowboy's been one of the most active guys ever. He fights 4 to 5 times a year.
Especially with the damage he's taken recently.
Recent damage, the historical damage, the cumulative damage. It's just like he has 13 losses, and those losses were not light losses for the most part.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's going to be tough for him.
And he's a Hall of Famer, by the way.
Yeah.
Hall of Famer, easy.
No question.
Even though he doesn't have a belt.
The guy's a legend.
The
guy's a legend, no matter what.
Most performance bonuses. At one point, he had the most wins. He had the most finishes, like most fights, I believe, as well. Like, there's no questions.
Guy's an animal.
Here's a question for you guys. Let's say he wants to have one more fight before he hangs it up. Yeah, retirement fight. Who would you guys want to see him matched up with?
That's a good question. Let's look at the rankings, maybe see if I can think of some other. Or I think it should be an older guy, a legacy kind of like a throwback kind of fight. But the question is against who? I mean, even I was going to say Drew Dober for a second, but Drew Dober is way too much of a scary. Like he's on his way up. He's heading in the other direction.
Nate Diaz.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can see that would be a good fight, or Nick Diaz as well.
Or Nick.
Yeah, Cowboy versus the Diaz brother would be good. I would say Anthony Pettis, but they fought already. Yeah, I like that. I like Cowboy
Yeah.
versus one of the
I mean,
one of the
I
Diaz
don't
brothers.
like it, but like it's the most reasonable thing, all things considered.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cowboy
Apologies
and Robbie
for
Lawler.
cat sounds on the microphone, everybody.
Cowboy and
Cat
Lawler,
sounds
Cowboy and
loud.
Woodley. Cowboy Woodley, I actually don't know who would win, by the way. If you asked me a year ago, I'd say Woodley any day. Now I'm not so sure anymore.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
I think Cowboy has like the output that he would be able to neutralize Woodley.
No, I actually don't necessarily agree. I think Cowboy is not necessarily as much of a volume striker. I think he's a bit more of a sniper, a little bit more of a technician than a volume guy. And actually, in fact, when you saw Nico turning up the volume, that gave Cowboy issues. I would favor Cowboy though, just because Cowboy is. It seemed, especially in that Nico fight, when Nico was going forward, it was Nico's fight. When Cowboy was going forward, it was Cowboy's fight. And It's not very difficult to be the one moving forward when you're fighting Tyron Woodley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the biggest hype train of the last 2 months. Absolutely.
Biggest hype train of the last
few
how
years.
long?
Since McGregor,
Like,
I'd say. I think he's more hype than O'Malley. But let's even
he's way more hype than
But
O'Malley.
let's say his name, Khamzat Chimaev, takes on Gerald Mearshart. This is the one where I was coming into this saying, all right, here's where we find out who is Khamzat. Is he really the guy that he's looking to be? Is he going to be able to wrestle this guy? Maybe
Do we even know who he is after this fight?
Or maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see some striking, and we'll force him to do a little bit of striking. And then he didn't strike. He threw one punch. Gerald threw 0 punches. And Khamzat has now, with that 13 or 17-second knockout, has been hit twice in his only 3 UFC fights.
Unbelievable.
What?
Crazy.
Oh my God! And the power.
See what Gerald Mearshart tweeted out after the fight?
No, I didn't.
All he had to say was, "Well, I royally fucked that up."
Look, and by the way, Khamzat's not a 185er. Khamzat is 170. You don't see 185ers knocking each other out with one punch ever. So to see it with 0 buildup, a single punch thrown out for a 170er that knocks you, this doesn't make sense. This guy is something out of this world.
Yeah. It's going to be extremely exciting to see just how high he can climb and how quickly. They want to give him another fight before Maya.
Yeah. I hope they do.
17 seconds? They do. Keep him active.
Unless he broke his hand, what are you going to do?
Some of the shit he was talking before this fight, too. I mean, he backed it up. It's going to be great to see someone with the same overwhelming dominance, potentially, as Khabib.
Or Colby.
While being a complete shit-talking guy.
I want to see Colby and Khamzat. I need to see Colby and Khamzat, dude. That is a perfect fight.
That is a fight for the fans.
If he beats Maya, I want to see the Colby fight. That's the one I want to see more than I want to see the Kamaru fight. For some reason, I just feel like that Colby fight is the one with all the buildup, because Kamaru is going to be respectful, especially because he likes Khabib. He knows they have a similar background. Do you think Colby is going to be respectful to anybody?
God, he's going to have some dumb shit to say.
Oh my God, I need to see that fight.
That's going to be pure entertainment.
So as you said, they are looking for him to book him another fight, potentially on Fight Island. So the real question is, I guess there's 2 questions. What weight class do you put that fight at? Because the reason he's been fighting at 185 and then 170 is so that he doesn't have to cut weight, and then he cuts weight after the fight and then fights again at 170. Mm-hmm. So do you put this fight at 170 and make him cut weight twice because he has to fight Maya? Or do you say, you know what, do another 185? You're killing it clearly. You clearly have the power to back it up. Go for it.
I mean, Dana said himself he is a 170-pounder. Mm-hmm. And I think that ultimately that's where he would like to see him. But Khamzat, after that win, like, he's really writing his own ticket here. Whatever he wants. And, I mean, a knockout like that is going to give him some serious confidence at 185.
Yeah, I'm sure if you wanted to fight at 185, like for a fight in between this one and Maya, like I'm sure Dana would not be opposed to it at all.
Mm-hmm. So who would you like to see him again? So I can say an Ian Heinisch would be good. A Kelvin Gastelum could be a good fight. Uriah Hall if he beats Silva, but I guess that's too soon. So maybe an Edmund Shabazian could be a good fight. There's a bunch of guys, or
Yeah.
Derek Brunson, actually. I would like to see him against Derek Brunson. Brunson's got the wrestling and the power to back up what Khamzat has in both of those.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like a better version of Derek Brunson. He's Khabib with striking. He's Khabib.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like, I don't even have much to comment on, like, the fight itself. Like, it's 17 seconds, one low kick, one right hand. Like,
what could we add to this commentary of this fight?
Actually, what I found really interesting is that immediately Khamzat walked him down, which I didn't expect. You don't usually see the much smaller man walking down the much bigger man. He just trapped him along the fence. Gerald, the whole fight was running along the fence until he finally threw that one shot and it was over. But
it's like he knows something that we don't.
He's just in control. He just comes in. He says, I'm going to do what I want. And he goes and does it. And I'm just so curious to see, because, look, you can keep on doing this, and you can keep on doing this all the way until you're the champion. You can have these insanely dominant performances and become the champion. As we saw, John Jones did exactly that. However, eventually, it is an absolute rule in MMA. Eventually, somebody's going to put it on you. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to put up a fight. Someone's going to drag you into deep waters. And the question that we really have to find out is what happens when that happens, because we've only ever seen him be dominant. And that's what we saw with John Jones against Gustafsson, and he squeaked by and he was able to do it. But I'm really curious to see what happens.
Hardy had a similar trajectory as well.
Yeah, but yeah. Or I would actually say even more than Greg Hardy, I would actually say Edmund Shabazian is a good example. Because Greg Hardy was entering the sport. They were kind of building him up and trying to teach him as he went. Edmund Shabazian came into the UFC blitzing everybody. He had the Contender Series knockout, and he was winning every single fight by first-round knockout and he's at 185, and he was doing so with skill. He was doing so looking like he was just a phenom, like a John Jones-type phenom.
Right.
And then eventually he had that fight against Brunson, and Brunson dragged him into deep waters, and Shabazian gassed out, and he couldn't keep it up. I think it's really I want to see what happens when someone can keep up with Khamzat. So that's why a guy like Colby, a guy like Kamaru, who he might not be able to put up a fight, or they might not be able to beat him, but they'll be able to stay alive and put something on him.
There is a distinct possibility, though. I don't know how probable it is, but that this guy, he just runs through them all. He could just make everyone look like children and shake up the game.
Crazy.
He could be another John Jones. He could be another Khabib. And the prospect of seeing that happening in real time, that we get to see that as it happens, is very exciting. This is easily biggest hype train of, like, I can't even say the year. There's nothing else that comes close. The last, 5 years for me.
Dude, actually, I was thinking, I mean, if he keeps on going at 185 as well, can you imagine this guy starting to fight guys like, Darren Till, Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya, Paulo Costa, Yoel Romero? Oh my God, can you imagine Yoel Romero against Khamzat?
Oh, that would be a war.
The size difference is insane, and yet you actually you very much look at Khamzat and said, he can win it, for sure. It's crazy.
The fact that a guy like Khamzat has one punch KO power at 185, but Costa doesn't. And
Khamzat has no muscle. He doesn't look like he has muscles. He looks like a skinny dude.
He's got to be the most dense man on the planet. He's packing rocks into himself.
It's something about the Dagestanis in general. None of them look like they have crazy abs and crazy pecs and shoulders and biceps, and none of them look like Paulo Costa. None of the Dagestani guys do.
I think there's always something to be said for just that toughness of upbringing.
No, it's the wrestling strength. Something about wrestling strength, specifically the grip strength. They have, and I think there is definitely something genetic about it as well, right? Because these guys are all from the same region.
It's a functional strength thing, though.
It's a functional strength, exactly. It's not this weird, okay, maybe they can't bench press 300 pounds, but when they grab you and they have their arms locked around you,
it's like nothing.
They feel like 300 pounds.
Yeah.
And then it does, and then not even that, though, because he punches people out in one shot. He puts them away.
Coach told me do some box for first round. So I do some box for first round.
Unbelievable. I can't wait to see where he goes next, see what they schedule him.
Yeah,
Eventually,
super
that
exciting.
Colby fight would be like my number one most anticipated fight I could predict.
I mean, he is. If we have a guest on this podcast, I think it's got to be Khamzat, right? The SmeshCast.
yeah.
It's got to be you can't have anyone but a Dagestani as the Smesh
Exactly.
master.
We'll build publicity for him. He'll build publicity for us.
Exactly. I think he needs us. I think we'd be really good for his career. We should contact Ali.
And we could probably it could help. We'll humble him. He'll humble us. It'll be a good mutual thing.
Exactly.
I don't know if you guys heard. I remember someone said at the beginning of the fight. They announced. I think he went in over like 3 months from like something like 25,000 followers on Instagram to 500,000.
Oh yeah, that was after
wow.
the Fight Island one. Yeah, he gained over 400,000 subs.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna follow him right now. I'm gonna do that before I forget.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. We had 2 more great fights on the main card. I think maybe 3 more fights on the main card, but the next one we're going to talk about is the Johnny Walker against Ryan Spann fight. And that was a weird one. That was a wild one. Ryan Spann looked like he was a better fighter, actually. Ryan Spann, Walker, he still has that weird movement, that weird jumpy, herky-jerky motion. He has definitely toned down. He's not dancing like he used to on the way. He's not quite as animated. He's kind of settled down a little bit, kind of like John Jones did when he moved to Albuquerque to work with Jackson Wink. However, he still has that power. But when he was throwing these strikes, and he's throwing them against a guy who's very, very technical and very kind of simple technical. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way. He's a good wrestler.
He's a fundamental guy.
Exactly. He has great fundamentals. He just throws straight punches, waits for his opening, and finds it. And when you have a guy as weird as Walker, but a guy as patient as Spann, he was able to just wait for the openings that Walker gave him. And I think he was definitely winning most of the exchanges.
Oh,
But then Ryan Spann went for the takedown. He had his head on the wrong side, and Walker just went. We've seen this kind of a trend in the last half year. We've seen this kind of finish a little bit more often, where the guy's in for the takedown, and the guy just kind of defends the takedown by just striking to the side, some big elbows, and eventually, you do that enough times, a guy's going to go out, especially when you have a 205-pound, 6'6" monster in Johnny Walker on top of you.
It's a fatal error that you can make, and it's just I think that as long as people continue to defend takedown attempts like that, people are going to have to get smarter with their takedown attempts. They're going to have to be more crafty. It's like as soon as people start checking these leg kicks that are so popular now, and we get another Anderson Silva, people are going to keep abusing people's legs. So I think it's great. That kind of threat makes people have to, forces people to have to fight smarter. But God, we're never going to get a normal fight with Johnny Walker.
Good.
It's not possible.
Good.
He's going to make it weird no matter what.
It was so bizarre. Both of them tripped once or twice at least. They were just flying all over the place, and it just brought strange entertainment to the fight.
It's a classic. Everyone knows the thing that makes fights so exciting is you never know what's going to happen. I'm not gonna lie. I actually find it very difficult to watch fights, even if I haven't seen the fight before. If I know who won, or if I know how long it goes, that takes away a lot for me, because it just doesn't have that edge of I don't know what's going to happen.
The surprise factor's gone.
Exactly. It's still interesting to watch the techniques, and it's still exciting, but it doesn't have that same buzz to it, I don't find myself glued to the screen like I usually do. And this is a fight where exactly that happened, right? You just didn't know what was going to happen. And I think Johnny, to be honest, I don't know if this is a good thing that he won, because he did take some confidence from that, and he did seem like he changed his style. He's been training with John Kavanagh, McGregor's coach at SBG, but I don't know if he really, really put in enough changes and if he's really improved enough to really be a competitor yet in that, like a top competitor.
He needs work.
And I hope he recognizes that.
Well, I hope more than anything that his coaches recognize that. I mean, any good coach, worth their shit should see that, you capitalized on your opponent's error in a very spectacular way and you won. But just because it was like a spectacular TKO, it doesn't mean that it was a demonstration of, extremely high skill or but I think what was interesting was during his post-fight interview, Walker seemed to be of a very serious mindset, which is, seems kind of different. He's been a goofy
serious,
guy
yeah.
in the past.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of guys, that serious championship mindset can really be a make or break thing for, moving forward in your career. So I think as long as he keeps his head on his shoulders, avoids taking like crazy damage, I think this confidence boost is good for him. I think that when they run this fight back, it's going to be impossible for him to look at this and say, I performed to the best of my potential. I think he's going to be forced to reevaluate and, put in some more work. I think he's ranked exactly, where he deserves to be, and he's going to need to put in a lot if he wants to, rise through the ranks. But I think he can do it, but he's certainly not nearly the hype train that he was like 4 fights ago.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, he lost the hype.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's ranked 11 now, which is exactly where he should be. I think in a fight against a guy like maybe a Volkan could be a good fight. A Volkan Ozdemir, maybe the winner of the Magomed Ankalaev versus Jan Kutilaba. I think that could actually be a really good fight. Because Magomed Ankalaev is ranked 13, and if he wins that fight, he'll probably be ranked 12th or 11th, and I actually do expect him to win. So I think that's actually for me, that's the next fight. Give him the winner of the Magomed and Kutilaba fight if it actually ends up ever happening. It is booked for the Khabib card in late October, but who knows what's going to happen with that one.
Big if.
All right, moving on to the next fight on the card, or I guess the previous fight on the card. We had Randa Marcos taking on Mackenzie Dern, and Mackenzie Dern
Canada
just dominated that wrestling. That BJJ. She went transition to transition, had her in that armbar for looked like 30 seconds at least. Was pounding the face,
kept trying to switch around the positioning,
and she would pound the face. She would cover the face. She would pound the stomach, and she would go back and forth. And eventually, she got enough crank on that arm to get the submission.
Yep, it was just we saw a very good about as textbook perfect demonstration of what poor fighter IQ looked like. Marcos should not have been so eager to just dive into the guard, with somebody like BJJ credentials like Dern.
One of the best female BJJ artists in the world.
That was a fatal error, and one that could and should have been avoided. But I mean, Dern put on a BJJ clinic. It reminded me of this is an old one. I think it was the GSP versus Dan Hardy fight, when GSP had Hardy in like such a tight it wasn't that fight. I can't remember which. Hardy fight was the deadly Kimura. But there was one fight I recall where GSP had somebody in a devastating armbar, couldn't get them to tap. The positioning was just not quite right. As soon as he went backstage, you can see the cameras, so he's working with his coaches to show him exactly what was wrong with the armbar, exactly where the positioning was just slightly off. And this situation with the armbar just not quite working with Dern, seeing the camera from above and seeing that the arm is, maybe just in the wrong position.
It's partly that women just are way more flexible in their arms. It's
partly that, but she could have repositioned, I think, a little better with her straight armbar.
And I think she got it in the end. But
and then she got it in the end. But it took her some time. It was a foregone conclusion once it was on the ground. But, that would be the kind of thing that, she's got to go back to her coaches. And if she has a championship mentality, she'll say, why didn't I get that armbar immediately? Why did it take me 30 seconds of work?
I disagree a little bit, but, I mean, I'm curious. Adam was trying to say something earlier. What were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna say that her slipping after trying to throw a high kick, and she fell into her back, and that's when her opponent proceeded to fall into her guard. Like, that worked so much to her advantage, and silly mistake on Marcos's behalf. But it was beautiful BJJ from Dern.
Yeah, I mean, you also the other thing about that kind of decision. I think you would expect a veteran to make a better decision. Randa Marcos has had 20 fights. This is her 21st fight. I think I would have expected her to make a better decision there.
This is her first 2-loss streak.
But to be fair as well, they kind of have a thing where, well, if you're fighting somebody and they fall down, your first instinct is get on top of them. You think you're doing well. You think you succeeded. Let's take advantage of their fuck up. And in this case, it was just the wrong move to make. And she should have thought of that way more ahead of time.
I mean, it should have been drilled into her head.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't go on the ground with her. And don't go into her guard.
Oh, my God. All right. Another good women's fight. We had the Jessica Rose Clark against was Sarah Alpar. I'm actually forgetting the first name. Is it Sarah Alpar? I feel like I'm saying it wrong, but it might be. What's her name?
I don't recall. I didn't actually catch this fight. I was driving. Okay. But I did catch the controversy.
Yeah, so the controversy in this fight, what's important to talk about here. So, yeah, it is Sarah Alpar, Jessica Rose Clark. Cool, I got the names right.
Nice.
So
that's why we're professionals.
So Rose Clark was dominating the entire fight. And she, what looked like was about to get a finish. She kneed Sarah when Sarah, so what it looked like, it wasn't clear if Sarah was down or not because she was on her feet, kind of squatted down all the way. And the only question is whether or not her butt was touching the ground. And she got kneed in the head and it would have been a finish, but they paused the fight. They used the brand new implemented rule of, I think it was implemented that day or the day before, where finally in Vegas you can go back and use replay. But the exact problem we brought up last week is what kind of happened. Yes, you can use replay and you can find out if it was legal or not. When they realized it was legal, they said, okay, no point deduction, start the fight again. But she would have gotten the finish. And the fight should have been over if it was legal. And so it's just like, what are you supposed to do? Yeah, you can do the replay, but they've lost all that advantage that they should have gained. Thankfully, she ended up getting the finish anyway in the third round. She ended up getting it 4 minutes and 21 seconds into that third round. And so regardless, it ended up kind of, it wasn't like last week where we had someone completely lose their win because of this situation, but it still wasn't ideal.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation that, I mean, I know I'm not qualified to come up with any kind of solution to this issue.
I don't. Do you have any ideas? Creative ideas, whatever. Throw them out there. We're not making the rules.
I mean, it's tough to say because I mean, you have to consider the repercussions of everything. I mean, like, yeah, if you take someone out of their position where they're dominant and they are moments from a finish, you can end up with a situation like we had last week. That was a perfect, as you said, a perfect example of when this can go wrong. But I mean, at the same time, I want to be sure when somebody, if there's going to be something that's going to dictate what happens with the fight, I want to be sure, like, you can't trust your eyes the first time around. Your perception is not, it's weaker than you think. These replays are very important. And I don't know, maybe having like a third party, like having like a ref specifically there to look over replays from like a secondary location.
No, they have that, but the problem is that it's kind of a catch-22. Because on one hand, in that situation, right, you don't know if it was a legal strike or not. If you let it go and let her finish her, then it's over. If you don't let it go and you go and you pause and you replay, then she loses the chance to finish. And so, like, it's either you pause or you don't, but either way, it's a lose-lose situation.
There's no perfect solution here. It's it's just a shame that we can't kind of make a clear, cut and dry rule that fixes this whole situation.
Yeah.
Does the fight continue from the position that it was stopped?
Well, the thing is that it depends on what the position is, right? So I'm sure if she had mount and maybe you thought, oh, maybe she had kicked her in the head or something while she had mount. I don't know what it would be. If it was in mount, I would say they probably would go right into that position. But
like a clinch or something,
so she's up against the fence, and it wasn't like a clinch against the fence. It was like she was leaning against the fence, and she just kind of sunk down. Like she bent her knees all the way down until her bum was almost on the ground, and then got kneed. And so what position do you start it back up again? You can't start it back up sitting against the fence like this.
Yeah,
you can't start it on the ground because the ruling was very much she was standing when it happened. Otherwise, it would have been illegal. So where do you start it up again? It kind of has to be the feet.
It's difficult.
So that's an interesting
Leave a comment. What do you think?
Yes, please. If you guys have ideas, leave us comments. Let us know. I'd be really, really curious to find out I'm
The
sure
next
Dana,
time when we have Khamzat on the podcast, you could talk to Dana for
yeah,
us.
we'll find out what Khamzat thinks about it, and yeah, he can have Ali pull some strings for us. But I mean, yeah, hopefully the Dana and the commission work on this and find a solution that works for everybody. Now this fight, as we said earlier, this fight card was full of finishes. Those prelims had, I think, like 2 decisions on the prelims and 2 decisions on the main card. Like it was just full of finishes. So we wanted to highlight a couple of them. The first one being Costa knocking out Journey Newson. Who wants to talk about that one?
I mean, I'll give it a quick one. I only managed to see I missed the first fight on the main card, and I only saw 2 fights on the prelims, just busy with some other things. But I did catch that Newson versus Costa, and that was a picture-perfect head kick knockout.
Oh.
It was the exact same, exact same as what was it, Kevin Lee and Gregor Gillespie.
Against
just
Gregor
that
Gillespie.
big head kick, that slow slump back into the cage, and then just walk the fuck away from there. It was picture perfect. It was beautiful, and Costa absolutely deserved the performance of the night that he got from that. And I think like, what does he have now? 6 first-round finishes in like 7 wins, something like that.
I gotta check that out.
He is a scary, scary man to look out for. He's got power. I mean, and just a hell of an entertaining guy. He had a great post-fight interview. He was just all hyped up. He was like, man, Anik, what the fuck? That was incredible. Like, God, he was just a pleasure to listen to.
Yeah, that was like a really good comparison, I think, to the Kevin Lee knockout, because what he had done really well, he had that step-in head kick, right? It was a step-in front leg head kick. The big difference was that Kevin Lee put it at the end of a punching combination, whereas what Costa did is he waited until Journey Newson actually threw a jab. No, sorry, he didn't throw. So Newson was starting to throw a bit of a feint, and Costa. And so this is what happened. I guess with the Kevin Lee, he hit him with a right hand, which made him fall to his right into the head kick. Yeah. Whereas in the Randy Costa fight, he had the same idea of he made him lean to the right into that.
Yeah, he got him to dodge.
Left leg head kick. However, the way he made him do it is with a jab, and he knew which way he would slip. So he threw the jab so that he would slip to the right, slip to that inside, and then he threw that follow-up head kick, and beautiful
demonstration of skill. Knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he finished the fight. He said himself, either I'm getting knocked out or he's going to sleep. It's happening one way or another, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and he finished that fight. Performance of the night.
Yep, a couple other shout-outs. Other great finishes. Tyson Nam had a great finish on this card. Who else had a great? There was a great fight between Andre Ewell and Erwin Rivera. Damon Jackson had a huge upset of Mirsad Hektic Bektic. Mirsad is a big prospect that people are really hyping out, and for Damon Jackson to get that first round guillotine, or the third round guillotine, I think it was very, very impressive. Overall, just a fantastic card.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, and one more shout out. I will say Kevin Holland taking on Darren Stewart. That was a great fight. I thought Holland won the first 2 rounds. Stewart dominated that third round. I think it should have been a 10-8, and I would have called it a draw at 28-28. But they gave it to Holland. They did not give it a 10-8 round to Stewart, and so Holland ended up winning. However, there was after the fight, Holland said, "I didn't win that. He put it on me. It should have been a draw." Went up to Dana White, and Dana's like, "Oh, well, it's a good thing that we don't make those decisions." He said, No. I did not win that fight. We're running it back. And Dana's like, "Yeah, dude, I love this guy." I think you got to give a lot of respect to the guy who says, "If I don't feel like I did what I wanted to do, I'm not moving on until I've accomplished my goal properly."
That's a very risky promotional move he did there for Dana, because I feel like you could just as easily underhype yourself to him, and Dana would just be like, "Yeah, okay, you're right." That could have easily backfired.
No, Kevin Holland's the guy who's always put it on the line. Kevin Holland has a good record. He's had a lot of KOs. Right?
It depends on your relationship with the promotion.
I mean, he's coming off 2 straight KOs.
Right.
So this is the guy who people like watching. People were really excited about this fight because Darren the Dentist Stewart is called the Dentist because he sends guys to the dentist. These guys, this was a really, really hyped fight. It was exciting. It was a little bit clinchy. And I think they were both worried about each other's power. But I think that that Dana respects when you have a guy who's as dangerous as Darren Stewart. You get through him, you get your hand raised, and yet you still say, I didn't do it as well as I wanted to.
Not good
Let's
enough.
do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And Dana
Big
respects
respect.
it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair.
Okay, that was a fantastic card. Let's move on. We have a little bit of news this week. It's actually a bit of a light news week. Speaking of light, the lightweight division has had some movement in it. So as we reported last week, the Dustin Poirier-Tony Ferguson fight was called off. They have not been paying Dustin enough. Dana keeps on saying, I guess he doesn't want the fight. And of course, people know he wants the fight. Even Tony Ferguson was saying, give him the fight, pay him the money he deserves, Dana. And he actually, apparently, both publicly and privately, was turning down fights. He was actually telling Dana, I will not take anyone else. I want Poirier. And that's why they ended up taking Tony off the card altogether. That fight is scrapped completely.
That is crazy.
And we're going to have, instead, Michael Chandler, who has officially been signed to the UFC, is not planning on fighting on that card, but he will be the backup to either Gaethje or Khabib, no matter who drops out. And Dana actually said,
no matter who, whichever one it will inevitably be.
He said on that Friday, he is weighing in at 155, no matter what. It doesn't matter if both guys are absolutely 100% good to go. He is not taking any more chances with this.
Yeah.
I actually heard that they're trying to find him a fight so that he has something to train for.
I heard they weren't, but I mean, they could be. I thought they asked Dana, and Dana said that they don't think they're going to find a fight. Another interesting question, though, is, well, where is he after? Let's say he doesn't have a fight on this card, but he was still the fill-in. So is he now the number one contender? And they asked Dana this, and Dana said, we have to figure some stuff out, but no, he's not automatically number one contender.
Yeah. I don't know Michael Chandler well enough. Is he that good?
He's very good. He's been around for a while, but I don't see him winning a belt in the UFC. I personally think that the best fight for him, the best intro fight, would be a Dan Hooker. A guy who's like ranked 5, ranked 6, one of the top guys in the division. It's a good, but not the top.
Yeah,
top
it's a good way to see where exactly he stands.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good measuring stick.
Mm-hmm. What a shame, though. That news is not something that we can just jump over easily. Yeah. That's a substantial loss from the card.
It really, really sucks. And honestly, I think that could be one of the best fights of all time. Forget fight of the year. Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson is every fight fan's wet dream.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, what else can we say that we haven't said over the news of all the fighters yelling at Dana recently? Dana, they deserve more. Step it up.
Pay the man.
Hey.
And like, it's Poirier, like the man who's always been willing to bring it.
He's paid in full. He's earned it. He's been around. He's done that. Like, what else can you ask for a man? And honestly, what I think they should do, and I think Poirier would probably take this deal. Now, to be fair, this is not what he's formally asking for, but I think he would take the deal of cut the show and win money. Just give him both show and win as guaranteed, and don't give him a win bonus. Say no win bonus, just show money, and you get a full $300K. And I think he'd say yes to that. That would be a lot more fair, because when you have a guy like Dustin Poirier, you know he's going to bring it. You don't need for these older guys to try to motivate them with extra money. Dustin Poirier doesn't need that extra motivation. You know he's bringing it every single time.
I'm interested to see what long-term ramifications we get from all these fighters really pressing Dana. I don't know if we're going to get some kind of unionization. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it means that Dana is going to start cutting loose some of these, excellent fighters, but who are, of the current generation who just,
there's no way.
I think I'm wondering from Dana's perspective, a guy like Poirier who is at the top of the division, but maybe isn't such a huge crowd, like mainstream draw.
No, that's not true. I think he is. I think Poirier at this point has crossed over the mainstream as well. And I think every single person likes to see Dustin Poirier fight.
Okay. I'm just gonna power through my point here.
Sorry, yes.
I don't know if Dana is willing to maybe just decide I'm gonna just start looking for new talent, find guys who are good, but who will also just who are easy to placate. I think he I just don't understand his end game. Is he just going to keep giving himself pay raises and then continue to pay people nothing? I mean, people are going to stop working for him. The best talent will eventually, I don't know if it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but this isn't sustainable.
Well,
People
here's
are
the
going to
thing,
come along and invest money and pay these guys what they're worth.
That's not true. That's not even true either, though, because even Michael Chandler was only making 100 and 100 in his Bellator fights, in his last Bellator fights, and so they just said, okay, well, we'll give you what we're going to give Poirier, 150, 150, and they did, and he said yes. I don't know for sure that's what he said.
Some people will always say yes, but as more people begin to push back, more of these fighters are going to realize just how badly they're being taken advantage of. I mean, look at it. I mean, boxing, it took a long time, but fighters eventually realized just how terribly the promoters were, and, even still to this day with young boxers, how horribly they've been taken advantage of.
Yeah, no, absolutely, these fighters are getting taken advantage of.
It's going to take a long time, but I think that I don't think that this is the last we're going to see of fighters.
Definitely not, and it's going to keep growing. Something that's interesting to note, though, or this is worth noting, I absolutely agree. I think fighters need to be paid more, and I think a union is something that would be good for the fighters, but I will admit it will be worse for the fans. When you have a union, when you have these guys negotiating for a lot more money, when you have there's a lot more negotiation available, the fights won't be made as easily. And you see that happening in boxing already. Of course, boxing also has the issues between cross-promotion, and that's
there's so many different.
That's a problem, and everyone wants a piece of the pie, and it's a bit easier in the UFC. But still, it'll be a lot more difficult to make fights when the guys are negotiating a lot more. But I still think that
ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, there's there's a bunch of needlessly complicated issues around it. When ultimately, what it should really come down to is, Dana, you can make $400 million a year, not $500 million, and invest that money into paying your goddamn employees.
Again,
you don't need another yacht.
It's not Dana money. It's not Dana that's getting the money, but okay, that's the whole.
Dana's getting money.
He's making money, but he's not making $300 million.
He is worth several $100 million at this point.
He is. That's because of when he sold the company. That's where he made his money. It's not from his salary that he's making. I mean, I'm sure his salary is a few $million.
Regardless, the point still stands. The people at the top take all the money, and people who actually make it happen, who we're here to see, they get nothing.
Yeah. So they definitely all deserve a lot more money. All right. Now, in other news, we actually just got word. There are rumors behind Floyd Mayweather looks to be making a comeback, which everyone...
a Floyd Mayweather comeback. I'm excited.
Right?
And whoever is he going to be fighting?
Well, now, before I say who he's fighting, I will note it is not an official boxing match. It's going to be an exhibition. But Floyd Mayweather, the greatest boxer of all time in some people's minds, 50-0, never defeated, might be fighting Logan Paul for some reason.
What?
Logan Paul, the 0-1. He's 0-1 in his professional record. He has one tie in his amateur record, and yet he has enough followers through Instagram, through YouTube, through Twitter, through TikTok, I'm sure, that he's gonna fight the greatest boxer of all time. Now he's also Logan's 200 pounds, and Mayweather is a lot lighter, right? He's gonna be in the low 50s. So he's
gonna be an open cat free weight, whatever you want fight.
He's gonna have 50 pounds on him. He'll have 5-6 inches of reach on him, and he's gonna get embarrassed anyway. It's gonna be great.
Oh my God, he's gonna get humiliated. I mean, Conor got humiliated. Why would?
Okay. Conor wasn't humiliated. No, Conor put up a fight. It wasn't a humiliation.
He did. But then after round 7, he started getting humiliated.
He was gotten dominated. He wasn't humiliated, though. That's, I think, the difference.
Yeah, I guess. You can't.
Logan Paul is going to get
humiliated.
Conor
has no shame. Neither does Logan Paul, to be fair.
No, Logan Paul doesn't mind. And to be honest, if you're Logan Paul, so why wouldn't you do this, right? You're going to get a ton of money.
Why wouldn't you?
And you have nothing to lose.
Guaranteed money for both. Guaranteed win for Mayweather. Does nothing to hurt his legacy.
If he loses, it does. If he lost, no, of course.
Okay, sure. If he loses,
but he's gonna embarrass Logan. I'm actually excited. I'm not gonna lie. I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to watch
Oh, no question. I'm going to watch it.
I want to see how many times Logan swings at air before he gasses
Right,
out
right.
and gets punched in the face.
It's gonna be like the Harlem Globetrotters of boxing. He's gonna be like up there winding his fist up. Ooh,
Yeah,
and he's gonna hit him with the jab. It's gonna be ridiculous.
Except it'll be a 3'3" Harlem Globetrotter destroying a 7 foot taller guy.
Yeah,
it's embarrassing.
It's gonna be really funny to watch. It's a no lose scenario for both of those fellas. And I don't know. I'm going to watch it. It's going to be hilarious.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I? I will say, I think that there's an element of this where, okay, boxing is in a really weird place, I think.
Yeah.
Where they are doing a way worse job of attracting young fans than UFC.
Oh, easily.
So they're doing these dumb, like, Logan Paul, KSI, Logan Paul, Floyd Mayweather.
Jake Paul has a fight against Nate Robinson, an NBA player.
Like, they're trying to really
that's the co-main event to Mike Tyson.
That's ridiculous. They're trying to attract this younger crowd, but I don't think that this is really the way to do it because these are fans that will only tune in for like this fight. Let me tell you how they do it. I had this idea last night. Let me tell you exactly why I should be getting paid by boxing.
By boxing, by the sport. The sport itself will pay you.
The fight in Fortnite. Put a big screen in Fortnite.
On Twitch,
join the lobby. Watch the fight.
No, do it on Twitch.
Christ.
No, forget Fortnite. Do it on Twitch. Do it on Twitch.
No, bro. No, Fortnite. You know the Travis Scott Fortnite.
Yeah.
There's an Anderson .Paak Fortnite concert happening now. If they do it in Fortnite, I swear to God, every human being under the age of 17 will watch that fight.
But again, the problem is that as you said, it attracts young fans to watch the fight. But that's the only fight they're going to watch. I don't see anybody watching. If
they're just going to do dumb bullshit marketing for kids, they might as well do it the right way.
No one's watching Logan Paul KSI and saying, wow, that was a quality boxing match. I want to get into boxing now. This is not happening.
Like I said, if you're going to do it, at least do it in a less stupid way.
Actually, here's a good example of why that's even true. All three of us watched Maymac. How many of the three of us consistently watch boxing? I watch 2 boxing fights a year.
Yeah. I watch like 2 to 3 a year.
I'll watch Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, right? I'll watch Canelo if he's fighting if I get the chance. But I'm not a boxing fan. Fights. But and yet Mayweather versus McGregor is way more legitimate than any one of Logan Paul's fights. And we're legitimate combat sports fans, and we were going into that, and we understood the striking. And so we understood the amazingness that is Floyd Mayweather, and we still didn't become boxing fans. So now you're going to take these kids who don't care at all about combat sports in the first place.
It's a terrible idea.
Don't know who Floyd Mayweather is. Half of them are coming and showing up for Logan Paul. Like,
right.
No one's going to be a boxing fan because of this.
It's a terrible idea.
It's not a terrible idea. It's going to make money. You do what you want.
Well, it's going to make money. But I'm pretty sure their plan is like, we want to attract young fans for years to come.
Yeah,
and it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Boxing in general, the big problem with boxing is that they're always short-sighted. Boxing is always make the biggest fight that we can today. Forget about next year. But the problem is that because, and I guess the reason that you have that is because you have all these different promotions and you have all these different people that are the promoters and you have the TV deals and you have all these really, really complicated situations. And so everyone's trying to maximize their own profit. And if you try to plan for the future, someone else can steal your thunder.
Mm-hmm.
In the UFC, they do a much better job of long-term planning because they have everyone under their banner, right? They really have a monopoly over the top sport. Mm-hmm. Yes, you have Bellator, but it's not really up to the level of the UFC. They have essentially monopoly over the top talent, and so they're able to go and build things up and they can sacrifice a guy. They don't need to be like, all right, well, this is my golden goose, let's protect him. Mm-hmm. They can sacrifice a guy because whoever beats him gets his glory, and the UFC has that guy too.
Yeah.
If you're Eddie Hearn and you have some of your big guys lose some big fights, like if you see Anthony Joshua losing fights, you're losing money because he's losing fights.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the big things that MMA has going for it as well, as opposed to boxing, is because it is still in its infancy relative to like every other major sport league with the UFC, like in the world. UFC has to have like a 5 to 10 to 20-year plan going forward. Like, I mean, unrelated to combat sports, but let's say like the NHL, they at this point don't need a 5-year plan other than hockey will happen and people will watch it no matter what. Boxing for a long time had that. People will tune in no matter what. It's boxing, it's huge, but you know, they've got a real dynamic competitor, and they're hurting, and it shows. So the UFC, being that they're in their infancy, they have that 5-10 year plan in the bag. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, but they're also investing in their own future, though, and not only in terms of the fights, not only in terms of who they're booking against who and who they're building and whatever. If you look at where the UFC money is going, the UFC PI, right? They have one now. Of course, they have the Vegas one. They have one that's 2 or 3 times the size that's being built. It might be done by now in China. They have one that they're building in Mexico as well. They're planning a couple of other ones, I think, for Europe. So they're building these UFC PIs all over the place to get grassroots talent a place to train.
PI? What is
Performance
that?
Institute.
Oh, okay.
That's these massive gyms that are fully stocked. Yes, they have the gyms in terms of the weight room. They have all the equipment that you can possibly think of for training, but they also have all the recovery equipment that you can have. They have staff that works all of that, and it provides it for free to every single fighter on the roster. You have
MMA Training Central.
It's literally what it is. And when you think about it, if you go to the NHL, you're not paying for your own food. You're not paying for your physiotherapy. You're not paying for your cryotherapy. All these things are being provided for by the team, and that's what. And the reason they do that is because it allows their players to perform better. The UFC is saying we need to invest in grassroots talent in MMA. We need to make sure that all of our fighters have access. At the very least, they can choose to do what they want. But they know if they come to Vegas, or they go to Mexico, if they go to China, if they go to one of these PIs and live there, which they're going to have dorms there too. They're investing in the hotel. Then you'll have a place where you can consistently train at no expense to yourself and get the best possible training, and therefore get the best possible fights.
Which kind of feeds
forward.
Yeah, which kind of feeds into the argument of fighters not getting paid enough. It's like if you work for a big company and they provide you with a salary, but they also provide you with benefits, which if you don't take advantage of, like those benefits are there in lieu of pay. So now these fighters are going to be granted benefits such as free training, physiotherapy, dietitians, nutritional sciences, and stuff like that. Now it kind of builds the base for UFC sort of giving back to their fighters a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, listen, I still don't. I mean, when you got boxers making tens of millions of dollars, I still can't agree.
But here's the difference, though. Yes, you have Canelo, who's making $35 million a fight, and just recently said.
I know at the lower levels of boxing, the pay is not nearly as high as the UFC.
Look, when you
had
Mayweather,
sports,
when
these
you had
athletes make nothing.
No, but Noah. Yes, they're not making as much as the top guys. Of course, they're not. But it's not even that. When you had guys on the undercard of Mayweather and McGregor making 500 and 500, not 500,000, 500,000, $500 to show and $500 to win on the undercard of Mayweather McGregor, where these guys making $100 million.
Who's going to
when
deny
you go
that?
to the UFC, at the very least, the bare minimum that they make in the UFC is 10 and 10. So the top guys aren't making nearly as much as they are in boxing, but the middle guys are actually outperforming boxing. Absolutely.
Sure. But relative to like the world of athletics, UFC fighters are earning, a grossly small proportion of the pie.
When you're talking
they
about
need a greater
NBA,
slice of the pie relative to everything.
That's the problem. So they have, and that's because of the union, right? So NHL has the NHL Players Association. They have the MLB Players Association. All these big major league sports have unions, and generally the agreement is a 50-50 split in revenue sharing between the players and the owners. And so and so that of course can happen. In the UFC is a 16 to 18% revenue share. And that's what the UFC themselves have reported. And of course they would want to make this as high as possible because this was during a lawsuit that said that they were underpaying. So this is the max possible. The upper limit on how much they're paying is 18%. whereas, and they should be making 30-40% easily, and I'd like to see that happen. They should essentially be doubling these guys' pays.
Mm-hmm. All right, to the next.
Yeah, we have a couple other things, a couple other small points. Artem Lobov, the GOAT, is planning a return to MMA. He says he wants to fight anybody, anywhere, anything. We'll see what happens with that. He's always a good guy to watch. I mean, he had his couple fights in bare knuckle fighting where he beat Paulie Malignaggi. But he's looking to make a comeback back to MMA. I don't think he's going to get anywhere but maybe Bellator. I can see him being signed in Bellator. But in other news, John Jones has been making some headlines, trying to show off his physique. He's been working up, trying to get up to that, build that 230, 240-pound body frame for his fight at heavyweight. And yet, whenever Dana is asked, Dana says, "Oh, I haven't spoken to him. He doesn't want to fight," which is, of course, what Dana says every time someone isn't willing to take the money that Dana's offering to fight. He doesn't want to fight, in Dana's mind, means he's not accepting the money that we're offering to fight. Not he doesn't want to fight.
Yeah, he's really making a calculated move. I mean, like, John Jones is still, I think he is slightly underestimating the star power that Jones still has. I think that even at this point in his career, he is not someone you want to lose. Jones is someone you want to give whatever they want. You know, within reason, sure. Sky's the limit with Jones, but he should be, I mean, in theory, in the top, I mean, not even in theory, based on the pound for pound rankings, he should be in the top 5 highest paid guys in the UFC. He deserves the money. Let him fight. It's got to be, how much money are you losing not paying him what he wants to fight versus the money you'll make on the pay-per-views? I mean, like, people will pay to watch a Jones fight,
so I think
especially heavyweight.
There's two things at hand here. I think, first of all, the UFC has such a packed schedule right now. They have so many big names that they don't necessarily need him at this moment. Once we start seeing a lot more of these fights kind of happening, and we see how long it'll take for some guys to come back, I think we'll have a better idea of when they're going to need John. But I think the other big thing is I think that they're really waiting for the heavyweight division to kind of play itself out. I think they don't want to put John Jones against someone and see him lose to a guy who doesn't make them a ton of money. I think personally, what their plan is to have that Stipe Ngannou card, and then or fight, and then have John face the winner and make his heavyweight debut as for the belt, where they can really make the money that and squeeze every dollar out of him. I think that's why Dana's not willing to negotiate right now. I think he's just waiting until the time is just right to give him a fight, and he doesn't want to give him. He's saying maybe you're worth more than $5 million for a heavyweight fight, but there's no one that I would pay that I would give you more than $5 million for you to fight right now. The only person I would do that with is Ngannou or Stipe.
I think that's a good theory, actually. Yeah.
So I hope I'm right, because that'll just mean John will come back hopefully in the summer. We'll have the Ngannou Stipe sometime January, February, and then we'll come in the summer. We'll have Jones back at heavyweight.
That would be nice.
All right. Well, let's now move on to the first massive Fight Island card. We have a pay-per-view coming up next weekend. Israel Adesanya, the much-awaited grudge match against Paulo Borrachinha Costa. The Eraser is going to come in, try to throw big, heavy strikes, try to really, I guess, push Adesanya against the fence, close down that distance, and then once he has him trapped, that's when he likes to unload those punches. Adesanya is going to keep on running around the cage, keep him moving, keep him turning. I think is one of the biggest keys I think we're going to see. Costa won't be able to walk forward. He's always going to have to move sideways, and I think that's Adesanya's strategy. And I think if I rewatched the Uriah Hall fight the other day against Costa, and those jabs were eating Costa up. And I think, of course, Adesanya is going to bring those in. And what really eventually made Hall lose was just eventually Paulo just kept on throwing and eventually got in and just walked through those jabs and started hitting Uriah. And it was just too much to handle. And it's really exciting to see what kind of pressure can Adesanya handle and how can he handle it. How is he going to be able to counter-strike?
Exactly. I think that there's a lot of the hype behind Costa. I mean, Costa's a hyped fighter. I mean, he's 13-0. He's performed phenomenally every time. But there are some issues that have been pointed out. Like the one main thing that I'm hearing is that despite a lot of people, I think a lot of hype on him rests on the physique and the fact that he looks so heavy for, his size, especially relative to Adesanya.
He is.
That's a fact. But one of the big things I'm hearing, and it's a fact too, is he does not have one-punch knockout power.
That's true.
He has high pressure. But you know who deals with high pressure extremely well is Israel Adesanya. That's about the perfect matchup for him. It's a high-pressure striker who's going to throw caution to the wind.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this has potential to be easy night for Adesanya and an exciting fight for all of us, no matter what.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's a good chance that Costa will be frustrated with Adesanya's fight style. I think that Costa will act recklessly. I think his lack of experience is going to show. Anyone really who goes against Adesanya is going to show a relative lack of experience. I mean, Adesanya is such a decorated kickboxer. The hype for Costa is real, but honestly, most of the hype that I see for him online is mostly to do with physique. And I just think that he isn't bringing anything to the table that Adesanya can't or hasn't ever in his career dealt with before.
Yeah, exactly. Adam, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this fight? How do you see this going?
So I rewatched Costa and Romero recently, and Costa using the technique of just always pushing forward and just sort of swinging strikes, not super fundamentally or in an orthodox style. That worked well for a fight like Romero, but as we know with Izzy, his strengths are counter fighting, and unfortunately, Romero didn't pull the trigger enough when the two of them fought. But I think that Costa being so young and being hungry and just wanting to come swinging right out of the gates will play to Adesanya's advantage this time, and I have a feeling we'll see a completely different fight than him versus Romero.
Yeah, and what I think it was really interesting, I think there's two facts, points I want to bring up that I think are really going to work in Adesanya's favor. I think, first of all, Paulo Costa does not throw straight punches ever. Mm-hmm. He doesn't. Mm-hmm. Paulo Costa is all hook, throw his whole body into it, and just
big haymakers.
Yeah, and most people just crumble under the pressure. And that's what happened with Uriah Hall. Eventually, he just couldn't take that much power, that much force, and that much just physicality. It was the physicality that really that wins him the fight. But Adesanya has dealt with those physical fighters. He has the movement. And when you have these wide strikes, it does two things. First of all, if your punches are out here, you're wide open to get countered. But second of all, the wider the punch, the longer it takes to get to his target, which means Adesanya, as the Weasel says, day in and day out, straight punches beat looping punches every single time. Paulo's going to go way out, leave his face wide open, and Adesanya will just jab down the middle, right hand, and knock him out like that, I think. Adesanya also has great head movement, which is going to help him as well. And the other thing that I found really interesting when I watched that Uriah Hall fight is that exact thing I was saying got Costa countered, got Costa caught. Costa actually got dropped in that fight because he just went through caution to the wind a little bit too much. And Uriah Hall caught a left hand and put him on his ass for a second.
Yeah.
He came back and he won it. But I can see that happening for Adesanya. I can really see him just countering when he moves in. And no, exactly as you said, if there's anybody who's dealt with big, heavy punchers, big, heavy kickboxers, it is Adesanya. He's done it for his whole career, and he's done it in a square cage. Forget a round one with a lot more space. But the one thing I will say that I actually think is being under-spoken about, Costa has decent BJJ. He has a black belt, but to be fair, it was given to him by his brother, so I wouldn't really say it's that legit.
Right.
But he probably does have decent takedowns. And if he does take him down,
that's the thing. Probably, but
if he takes Adesanya down, that ground and pound is going to be brutal.
Oh yeah, it's going to be rough.
I can see him getting a TKO on the ground. I don't see him knocking him out on the feet, to be honest. I think Adesanya's head movement is too much. But I can see him getting a knockout on the ground.
Yeah, I could say I don't think the fight will go there, but if it did, I would agree that Costa could win that way.
I think that Costa is also like I said, if he gets himself rattled and frustrated with Israel, I think that he's gonna just keep trying to hit him with those punches. I think he's got a point to prove, and I think he's maybe got a bit of a bone to pick. But yeah, I think that we're all pretty much in the same page as to how this is going to go. One thing I'm thinking is I don't think that Costa's gas tank holds up very well, even by the end of the Romero fight. I mean, I remember thinking, if this is 5 rounds,
Absolutely.
Romero's about to destroy him in these next 2.
Costa,
No question.
So he has amazing cardio for a guy that looks like Costa does.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the cardio that Izzy has at all.
Izzy is like godlike cardio.
I mean, he also just knows how to pace himself, especially with a pure striking match like he had against Gastelum, which was almost pure striking.
Right. I rewatched that recently, by the way. That thing is still one of the best fights I've ever seen in my life.
Holds up every time. Time. Amazing.
One thing that I think is interesting is I think that they're both relatively predictable. You know what you're walking into when you go into either a Costa fight or an Adesanya fight. I just think that it favors Adesanya more to that Costa's predictability more than Adesanya's predictability favors Costa. Because Adesanya, I mean, geez, what he needs to do is he needs to just drill with people that are going to throw those wild haymakers and pressure him, and he needs to just drill his dodging. And then when he steps in there, it's going to be business as usual. Who can Costa drill with that has that same defensive capability of Adesanya?
Usain Bolt. Run Adesanya, come on.
Oh yeah, that's true. the only runner slower than Adesanya. Yeah, there's no one that Costa can train with that I think can prepare him for the defensive-ness and agility of Adesanya, but Adesanya can train with plenty of people that can prepare him for the pressure and the haymakers.
And he's been there.
Yeah.
And he's faced him before.
Good point. I think that this is the kind of fight that's going to piss off casual fans. Costa has picked up a shit ton of haters against Adesanya. He has really rallied the forces through his admittedly extremely funny social media presence, far funnier than people give him credit for.
Yeah, I agree.
He's but no, if I'm Adesanya going into this fight, this isn't a fight that would be like it's obviously any fight's a worrying, concerning fight, but I feel like I would be pretty confident if I was Adesanya walking into this. Like I would just ignore the hype and just be like, listen, this is gonna be business as usual.
Let's put odds on this fight. I would put this my personal odds. Like, what do you think if you had to put odds on this fight? Where would we put them? I'd say minus 200 for Adesanya, plus 220, or minus like 180 plus 200. Adesanya favor. What would you guys say?
I'm not good with these Vegas odds. The negative.
Just to be like 2 to 1. What should I know you think Adesanya should win? Should be a 1-1 favorite, 1.5, 2 to 1. What do you think?
Yeah, probably like a 2 to 1.
2 to 1.
I think that he has a way more means of beating Costa than Costa has means.
Here, how about this? What percentage chance do you think he has of winning? What percent of the time do you think Adesanya wins this fight?
Probably 70% of the time, 60% of the time. More than 50 for me.
Yeah.
60 sounds even low to me. I don't know, probably 70.
Yeah, I'd
probably
say 65.
65, 7 out of 10 times.
Yeah, I would agree.
Agreed. Cool. I guess we're all in. I guess it's a unanimous decision. Well, for another fight that I think this one's really flown under the radar. I'm a little surprised. Sure. There's been no talk about this, no hype behind this, and this is a great fight. We've got the light heavyweight belts that is vacant because John Jones abandoned it.
Fight. This is a historic fight.
And we've got Dominic Reyes taking on Jan Blachowicz. And in my opinion, I almost see this as a first title defense for Dom Reyes because I still think he won that. And if you're going to have someone have that belt, it should be Dom Reyes. But I think it's a really interesting stylistic matchup because this is the guy who's going to try to take him down, who also has heavy hands. He's not as fleet of foot as John Jones, but he's a dangerous guy. He's almost like a better version of the Chris Weidman that Dom was able to knock out.
He's very athletic.
Both of them are very athletic.
Yeah, but he especially, I think he split football, or Yeah, Dom.
Yeah, he almost made the NFL.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Wow.
he's just
I
like
didn't know that.
you can see he's very like explosive and kind of in a different way that most fighters look. Like he just has a certain like athletic capability that you don't see too
Mhm.
often, and I think that'll sort of just edge him the win.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there were two big things that he took. Maybe actually, I'd say three big things that he took from football that really made an impact. I think the first one is just knowing how to compete. When you're competing all the time, it makes it a lot less stressful when you're competing. You understand how to get into the competition mindset. You know how to prep beforehand, how to peak
Mhm.
at the right time. So I think that definitely helped him.
Yeah,
I think
strong mental game.
Yeah, the second thing that helped him a lot from football, I think, is footwork. He has some of the best footwork in the division, and the reason that is because football players work a ton on their footwork. They have to be able to change angles very quickly, and that's something that Dom Reyes has one of the best abilities in the UFC to do. The way he knocked out Chris Weidman was all footwork, and changing the angle last second. That's how he got those finishes. He did a good job doing that against John Jones as well. But lastly, I think the most unique thing, because both footwork and that competitive mindset are things that a lot of the guys have in the UFC. But I think the thing that really puts Dom Reyes aside that he got from football is tape study. So when you go to football, these guys every single week that they play a game, they have hours and hours and hours of tape study where they go and they sit down and they watch the other team. They look for the tendencies and they look for their own tendencies and where they fuck up and where the other guys fuck up. They look at every little thing.
Yeah, football's very tactical, very strategic.
Well, Dom Reyes brought that over into the UFC. And so he actually has a tactician's game way better than most of these guys. He understands how to do these meetings, this film study, and he does it on a really high level. So I think that's really going to help him with a guy like Jan, who has maybe not a predictable game, but he has a few different facets of the specific things he's good at. And he has a lot of tape on him because you've seen him progress over the years from that time he lost 30-25 to Corey Anderson to coming back in 7 or 8 fights later, knocking Corey Anderson out. So you can see his progression. You can see where he's improving and where he's not improving. I think it's going to really help Dom out.
Yeah. I think this is this is going to be a clear win for Dom. I think that, I agree with you. This would, in another world, this is his first title defense. And, I think I'm giving it to Dom. His athleticism is just really something else. He brings a certain dynamicism. He's a dynamic fucking guy, and he's slippery, and he's going to be hard to hit with these power shots. And I like the cut of his jib, so I'm giving it to him.
What's your odds? What are your odds for the Dom win? What percent of the time does he win?
This one I'm actually caught between a 60% and an 80%. I'm not quite sure just how Dom, it's tough. This one is one that, just looking at footage of both of them, it's hard for me to say which one's going to win when they step in there. So I do think that Dom is the better fighter and he's going to win. I just don't know how much better he is. And that's really more of a statement about Jan, because I just don't know quite how good Jan is. I haven't followed him as closely.
Jan is very good.
I know he's far better than maybe the general public would give him credit for. And I will never get tired of watching whenever they show the little highlight that just ends with his little hammer fist, the little bonk on the grounded opponent. That's always gonna make me laugh.
Adam, who do you have?
Add sound effects to this shit, by the way. That's what they need on the promos. Cartoon sound effects.
I think I'm edging towards Dom. I'd say probably wins 65 to 70% approximately.
Yeah, I would say 60 personally. I'm not quite as confident. I do have a little bit more faith in Jan Blachowicz, especially with that Polish power or that Polish steel, as they say. I think he's a much bigger threat than people think. I mean, we saw against Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson threw one leg kick, and he just came over the top with the right hand and knocked him out in one shot, and then had that
you have to be careful.
Hammer fist. That's like Noah likes.
You have to be careful, but I think that Reyes is that guy who has that good combination of being careful but capitalizing on mistakes.
Okay. We've got a couple other good fights in the card. I don't think there's anything really, really noticeable. Kai Kara France has a good fight. Brad Riddell is fighting on this card, so we've got a big showing from City Kickboxing on this card. We also have William Knight, who is a chiseled beast of a man, who is it looks like a bodybuilder, to be honest, making his UFC debut. He's had two or three fights on the Contender Series. Finally got his contract,
Nice.
and it'll be really, really exciting to see him make his debut on the prelims. So we have a couple good fights. I actually think that next week's card, as an overall card, is actually a worse card than this one. It's not nearly as deep than this week's card was. However, the top fights are as hype as you can get.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
And, you know, it is what it is. You know, you never know just looking at the paper how good it's going to be. So you're just going to have to, I mean,
Exactly.
listen, you got to tune in and watch, and you'd be a moron to not tune in and watch next week. This is the big one. This is the one that we have been waiting for.
This is the
God,
moment
I am
we've
so
all
excited for
been
these title
waiting
fights.
for.
And it's just like, I can't say it enough. Light heavyweight championship fight without John Jones.
Or
This
DC.
this is a historic moment. This is a passing of the torch.
Yep.
And
Very true.
it's going to be interesting to see light heavyweight get shuffled around, you know? It's going to be interesting to see how long someone can defend their title there, you know?
Okay. Well, that being said, is there anything else to add on to this week? I think we covered basically everything. So everybody, please leave us a like, subscribe to the channel, give a comment. We had some questions earlier, so I'd love to hear maybe how you guys can change those rule set with the instant replay. Let us know what you think. Do you have any predictions for the fight next week? Do you have any questions you want us to answer next week? We'll answer any questions that you guys ask in the comments next week. Until then, have a great week. Enjoy the fights, and we will see you guys next Sunday. Signing off. See you guys next week.